Cool. I think we're live now. Please let me know if there's any issues with sound. You should be hearing me okay, seeing me okay. Looking at my desktop, this DAW open right now. You'll just put in some, you're hearing that sound there, that horrible hi-hat sound. So it should be all good. Yes, so this is it. This is Rishabh Rajan. I'm a teacher. So I'm an Ableton-Certified trainer. Work with Ableton a lot, produce music using Ableton a lot. I'm also Apple-Certified trainer for Logic Pro. Do use Logic as well. And also Pro Tools. I'm also a certified trainer for Avid's Pro Tools. Don't use that as much though. Mainly if I visit a recording studio or if folks send me, Pro Tools sessions, which happened very recently though. So that's my background. I also teach at Berklee College of Music in Boston here. I'm a professor in the electronic production and design department. I should look at the camera. The camera is there. So that's a little bit about what I do. So for today, my focus is going to be on a little bit of rhythmic theory. So you might be noticing that I mentioned Ableton Live, Logic Pro, Pro Tools, but what I'm showing here is FL Studio. So yes, I'm not I've used FL Studio a little bit here and there. I know it fairly well. And I know a lot of people here may not be familiar with it. And I know a lot of people think of FL Studio as just like a toy. It's not really a good DAW. But I just want to show you some of these fantastic rhythmic concepts using FL Studio, and it's amazing the way you can apply it using FL Studio's this channel rack feature here. There's like a step sequencer built in, and also the piano roll editor. If you are an Ableton Live user, you can pretty much do the same thing in there, and Logic Pro as well. All these features are applicable in those DAWs as well. So the focus is going to be more understanding these concepts. So it doesn't matter if you're not using this DAW, but I also wanted to just showcase that this is a very good DAW and definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. So let's get right into it. I think we're all good in terms of the sound and everything. Yeah, I just saw a comment. Everything looks fine, but where is Ableton Live? Yeah, Ableton Live is taking a bit of a breather here. So it'll be back, right? So I'm sure the next live stream will feature live. So just as a change up a little bit. All right, so polyrhythms, polymeters, and tuplets. Let's start with polymetric stuff. So what does that mean? We have multiple meters running at the same time, right? So okay, let's look at examples of this. So I've loaded in a default template here in FL Studio. It's completely blank, nothing over here. This window, this little pop-up window is called the channel rack, as it says over here, has a built-in step sequencer. So even before I can load in sounds, I can just immediately start, sequencing a pattern, like a kick pattern there. Just hit play, right? You hear the kick pattern, add claps, and of course these sounds can be swapped out. Put a snare there as well. If it's too loud, I can bring the master volume down here a bit. Okay, so that's a little pattern I've created. You can see here it says pattern number 1, and this is a pattern, and I can save this pattern. Well, it is saved, and I can load this pattern into my arrangement and basically create an arrangement out of it. But let's talk about polymetric stuff. So let's do this. I'll just do, for this one pattern, I'll just do the kick drum, right? So let's do, right? That works. We can feel there's a tempo thing here, so I can adjust the tempo maybe a bit slower. Let's do 120. Turn on the metronome. All right, so this is in 4. Yeah, so but it's a little bit syncopated, which is cool. Syncopation is great. But right now I have a 4/4 pattern, and my time signature is also in 4. All right, so that's great. Let's now load this directly into the arrangement. So you can see here it says pattern 1. I could have renamed it. Probably should have, but it's fine. I'll just load this in here. And now I have a kick drum pattern, and I can just kind of, there's a paint tool here. You can kind of paint in to extend the pattern. You want to be a bit careful to make sure there are no gaps. So there we go. So I've just painted in this kick pattern. I'm currently, when I hit play, when I hit the spacebar, this is kind of, if you're new to FL Studio, it's a bit weird. I'm hitting play. I don't see anything move here, but I'm hearing a pattern because we're currently listening to this channel rack, the sequence that I created in the channel rack. So if I want to hear the arrangement, I need to switch to song mode. It's kind of like Ableton Live. You have session view and arrangement view. Not exactly the same, but you have two different things that you can play back. So now I've switched to song, which basically means it's going to play back the arrangement. Right, so you can see that same thing repeating again and again. All right, so that's fine. Let's now create a new pattern. I'll keep that window open, and we can click over here. Actually, click over here to add a new pattern. This time, let's give it a name. Let's do snare this time. Snare. All right, so now I have a new pattern. It's completely blank. Cool. So now I can create a particular pattern by just adding in steps here again for the clap, let's say. Actually, let's use a snare because I called it snare, right? So let's put a snare there, put a snare there, put a snare there. Now I'm still playing song, but I want to play the pattern because this pattern is not in the sequence yet. So I'm just going to switch over to pattern here. All right, so now here's the thing. I could just do this again and again, and it's going to be completely in 4/4, but I want to change it up. I want my snare to have a different meter, right? So not in 4/4. So all I need to do is change the number of steps I'm using over here, and we can do that by clicking and dragging here. So you see how you see the grayed out area? That's the section we're not using. I can make it longer or I can make it shorter. Let's actually go shorter. Let's do 10 steps. Right, so now this thing is ignored. I can delete that. So we're not using that step. We're only using 10 steps. It's still going to think of it in 4/4, but it's just going to play the whole thing, play 10 steps for the snare. So let's just hear this with the metronome. So we're only hearing snare right now, not hearing the kick. Yeah, it's a bit weird because it has to cycle back to the beginning, and it notices there aren't any more steps, and it sees that, okay, you only have 10 steps and that's it. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning. Excuse me. So you have this weird abrupt jump to the beginning of the pattern. But this is cool. We'll keep this. So let's keep this, and now let's bring the snare in here. Right, so I place that in here, and again I can use that paint tool, which is already selected. And I'm going to make sure that it's right next to each other, so these patterns play right after one another. I'm just going to paint this a bit longer. Actually, let's stop till here, right, the beginning of bar 6, and let's extend the kick pattern here. So you click on a pattern, and then with the paint tool, when you click in an empty area, it'll create that particular pattern. So you don't have to keep going to this pattern picker and loading in patterns. So one important thing to note is that this snare repeats, right? You see here, it ends over here, and then the second pattern starts, and it ends over here, then the second pattern, the third pattern starts, and it keeps repeating at odd places, while the kick is perfectly aligned to the grid. But after how many repeats? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 repeats, they both perfectly align up. And then if I start again, it's going to start from the beginning. So let's hear how these two sound together. I'm still playing the pattern. Let's switch to song mode. I'll turn off the metronome first. We'll hear it without the metronome. Sounds a bit odd because these are two, when you hear them independently, it kind of makes sense. When you put them together, it's like, what is going on? And we don't have like a consistent reference. So I always recommend just get your brain working again on the downbeat and stuff like that. Just turn on the metronome. Now you can kind of feel, all right, so that's the downbeat. 1, 1. Right, so we've basically created a polymetric pattern, and we can do more, right? So let's do more. So we have a snare and a kick. I'm going to go ahead and add a hi-hat. So this time, oops, I just opened the hi-hat sound. So for the hi-hat, let's do a new pattern, right? So I'm going to keep it independent. So let's call this hats. So now we have a hats pattern, and let's change the length for this one. So we did 16 steps, 4/4. We did 10 steps for the snare. Let's do, I don't know, an odd number like 7 maybe. Again, switch to pattern mode, pattern playback. This might be cool, right? It's already sounding kind of funky. Let's see how this works with everything else. So load this in. And again, I'll just paint it across. Now you notice it doesn't align up with this because there's different length, right? So they may not align up exactly at the same time, but eventually they will. So let's hear this now. Yeah, and then I can keep extending it for as long as I want. So it's pretty simple to create these polymetric patterns. You just have to have different length patterns and just lay them up together, and then they interact and create these very interesting rhythms. Let's do one more. I'll add one since we have 4 sounds here. Snare. So add another one. Sorry, click over here. Let's just call this. Let's call it perk. Right. So it's percussion sound. All right. So for this one, what do we have? We had 16. We had 10. We had 7. Let's do 9, right? So why not? So 9, this time I'll start at the beginning. Let's kind of do like a consistent thing and then leave a gap. Let's hear this pattern. Yeah, not the best sounds. We'll swap out the sounds very soon. These are like the just default sounds. But for now, just to hear this, does this sound good with the other patterns we have so far? So the percussion thing is selected. Let's paint it in. Right, so again, it's not aligning up, but eventually after a few bars, it will align up. But you just hear the first 4 or 5 bars. Let's hear this. You play back the song. Right, so again, not the ideal sounds here, but the rhythm is really cool. So yeah, let's do this. Let's swap out everything. So in FL Studio, they have some decent stock sounds. So on the left over here, there's a browser. I've already opened the packs. They call it packs too, just like Ableton Live. Nice. So there are packs here. I'm in this drums mode audio pack. Let's see. Let's go to Foley. That might be fun. Let's say this bottle strike. Let's use the bottle strike for that so-called snare sound. So I'll just drag it over the snare and it'll get replaced. All right, what else? Ooh. Oh, that might be nice. Maybe for the hi-hat, little pop, bottle pop, lighter snap. I'm looking for sounds that are short, brief, because if it has like a long tail, like Foley sounds typically do, it might not work as a rhythmic element. So I guess that could be a kick, the pillow thud. Oh, that's nice. Scissor snap. That's a cool sound. Didn't hear that before. Is that for the clap? Still thinking about the kick. What should I use for the kick? Maybe go back to the pillow thud. All right, let's see if that works. All right, so I've replaced all the sounds, but the patterns, it's basically using MIDI. So the patterns will still play back using these new sounds. So I'm in song mode right now. Let's hear this. Let's try without the metronome first. So yeah, there we go. We've just created this really interesting kind of a rhythmic background element, which you can use as a background thing on top of a regular drum pattern. I was just looking at a question here. Question: when would you change the time metric instead of just doing it in 4/4? I'm just trying to think about like what the question really is. When would I change the... So right now everything is in 4/4. It's just that each pattern is a different length. But what I can do is my time signature is still 4/4. If I turn on the metronome here. Okay, let's make this very obvious. I'll put a regular... So you can do this just like in Ableton Live. Let's go for a regular, let's say a kick. So let's kick. I'll just drag a kick sample over here. So let's do classic 4 on the floor type thing, right? So repeat that. There's a little bit of a gap, that's why I'm not just swiping across, because then there might be a timing issue. But let's just hear the first 2 bars here. Right, so if you just loop this section, I think you have to hold down Command, click and drag, and you can set your loop length. Make that right from the beginning. You can zoom in here a bit, scroll in. So let's loop this first 2 bars. So my goal personally, to answer that question, my goal is I still want to do a 4/4 pattern. I just want these interesting polymetric things happening in that global, let's say, main 4/4 pattern. But you can totally change the time signature. There's a very cool feature here. If each pattern has its own time signature, you can basically import that into the what do you call it, the arrangement, or you can just set up your own custom. Let me see if I remember how to do that. So I think I need to put my cursor there and go in here somewhere and go to edit and maybe add, maybe not. There's a feature somewhere here where you can add a time signature change. Time marker. Yeah, so they call it time marker, but you can also convert it. Oh, there you go. It's called add time signature change. So now it's just asking me what time signature do you want to use. So I could just type in 5/4, for example. So now it's going to count. You can see there's a little marker there. It says 5/4, and now it has 5 beats per bar. Yeah. Interestingly, the next one goes back to 4/4. So 2, 3, 4. So right. So each the loop length is not right, but the first bar was in 5/4. So, but that's not what I wanted to show. We can do something in 5/4, and then we can have things in 4, and that'll cycle in an interesting way. But most music these days, you know, contemporary music tends to be in 4/4. So you can keep things in 4/4, but your rhythmic, you know, all the subdivisions that are happening can be a bit more interesting with this polymetric stuff. So hopefully this made sense. Let me show you. There's more really cool stuff. Let's go back in here, and this is something I have not seen in other DAWs. I mean, I guess you kind of can add a third-party plugin to do stuff like this, but let's do a new pattern. Let's just call this poly something. I don't know what it is yet. Right, so that's a pattern called poly something. And now I want to create a pattern for, let's say, this sound. So I'm going to, instead of clicking to add the values, I'm going to right-click here. And there's these options here: fill each 2-step, fill each 4-step. But there's an advanced fill thing here. Let's check out advanced fill. And you get this weird looking pop-up. So over here, we can predefine how we want to fill in those patterns. So this one should make sense. You can see, imagine your timeline has become a circle. So we have a hit right at the beginning. We have another hit here, the second beat, third beat, fourth beat, right? So that's what's represented here. If I play this, I want to make sure we are playing the pattern here. Hang on a second. Just make sure we're in pattern mode, right? So when I hit play, nothing plays back. Let me open up that window again, advanced fill. Play this. Right, so we're just hearing that. Okay, so what can we do here? Well, we can change the sequence length here. Right, just like I showed you, you can change the sequence length here. I can change the length here. I can say choose 13. Right, and now you can see at the back there, the layout is a bit different. And there's the interval. You define how much of a gap do you want between each hit. So I can say, let's do 3. Right, that's a nice one. And you can hit this dice, which will just kind of randomize it. Yeah, so you have all these different options here. And if you hit the check mark, it'll accept the changes. But that's okay. You can kind of still do that manually, like how I showed you earlier. This is a slightly quicker way of doing the same thing. But what if I click over here and change? There's a manual mode where you just click wherever you want. Right? So it's basically the same thing as just clicking things over here. So not too different here. But there's Euclidean. So I don't know if you've heard of Euclidean sequencers, but let's go to 16 and let's go to 4, the normal thing first. Right, so back to normal. So what a Euclidean sequencer does is you give it hits and then it tries its best to ensure that the gap between each hit is equal. Yeah, and it obviously may not always be the case, so it will, you know, make adjustments accordingly, but it'll try its best to keep it equal. Like right now, you can see it's perfectly equal. What if I change the step count to 5? So it realizes, okay, I'm trying to keep things equal, but that one extra hit is not going to work out, so let me just make room to make it kind of equal. Right, so now we have these 5 hits in that 16 sequence length. I can change it more. Let's do 6. Yeah. All right, let's do this. Let's accept this. And let's go to the next. This is very cool. I can switch to another pattern. Let's go to scissors. This is very cool. Very samba, kind of Latin percussion kind of vibe going on here. So I'm still in Euclidean. Let's try something weirder. Let's do 7. And on top of all this stuff, you can also shift the entire sequence. Like if I twist it, it's basically saying, oh, I'm going to move that entire pattern like 1 step to the right, or move it further. And you can see the background, the whole pattern is kind of shifting. And so this is very cool. Let's do the other one, pillow. Let's offset this as well. Yeah, that pillow doesn't have the low end that I'm expecting. I want like nice low end. That way we can quickly swap out the sound if you want to. Let's fill in the bottle strike as well while we're here. Bottle strike. Let's do a weird number like, I don't know. Let's do 9 steps for the sequence length, and step count, let's do 3. And hit accept. And now we have this really cool pattern. Yeah. Right? One pattern I just created, I call it poly something, really cool pattern, and now I can just use it. Now, it's getting a bit too much. I'm not sure it's going to work with, we already have this polymetric stuff going on here, and we have a 4 on the floor kick drum. I'm not sure if this will work with all that stuff, but just for the heck of it, let's try it out. Oh, switch back to the song. Kind of works, actually. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. This is amazing. I wish every DAW had something like this. There's a question about how to do this in live. So you'll have to just adjust the length. You make a pattern, and then there's a length option in live for a pattern. You'll have to adjust the length there. Make it, instead of by default might be 1 bar or 4 bars, you can adjust the length. Make it shorter or longer accordingly. But here we go. So that's basically polymetric patterns. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm going to now move on to doing, it's about 122, we'll move on to doing polyrhythms. So how do polyrhythms work? So for polyrhythms, I'm going to just load in a drum kit. So this was just individual samples on the sequencer. We're just basically triggering each individual sample in a specific way. But let's just go ahead and add an instrument. They have one called FPC, which is their version of an MPC. It's basically a drum machine. I can trigger with my controller here. They have some kits, not too many, but you can drag and drop your own samples. Let's just do a standard, I guess 808. Yeah, why not? So there was a question about offsetting snap to grid, or you can nudge it into microstep. So we're going to do that now, all the nudging stuff, because in the step sequence, actually, why not? Since there is a question, let me show you how that works. Oops, did I just fill it up? There we go. So each step, there's additional features. I can click over here. This might be difficult to hear because it's of the complexity. So let me simplify it. I'll go back to just this pattern, and let's solo. I think you have to hold down Command. Click on that little tiny. This is a weird thing. That little tiny LED is like the on/off button, or like the mute button. So now this one is on. Everything else is off. So we'll just hear this. In fact, the pillow thud wasn't very nice. Let's pick this one, the lid pop. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I clicked here, and now I have additional features like the actual note pitch. I can change the pitch. Where's the note? Should be on C5 somewhere. I don't know why it's not showing. Anyway, we have that. We have velocity for notes. Oh, sorry, we don't see it because I've selected the 808. I have to select this guy. Now we see it. So the note pitch is there. Velocity is here. I can change the velocity. Make things softer, louder. There's even release velocity. No one uses that. Fine tuning of pitch. Panning. Each sound can be panned left or right. You can just kind of like drag like this and pan things around. Mod X, Mod Y. This is an FL Studio thing. So Mod X is the filter cutoff, and Mod Y is resonance. So by default, when you load a sample into the FL Studio sampler, it has like an internal filter built in, and you can modulate the filter cutoff and resonance with Mod X and Mod Y. But to answer your question, shift. So with shift, I can basically push any hit further back in time. So again, this pattern is very complex. Let's simplify it further. Let's make it very simple. Oops. Right click to remove, left click to add. So let's just do... Wait, I'm doing the... Damn it. We're listening to this one, and I'm working on this one. Let's listen to this one, yeah. There we go. All right, scissor snap, 4 on the floor. Now, let's adjust the shift. So let's say I want the second hit to be slightly delayed. I can add some shift. Same for this one. Now here with the metronome. So you should hear that second and fourth hit, they are slightly behind. So this is a very cool way to just slightly, delay particular hits, so it's kind of behind the downbeat or where it's supposed to fall. So that's a very cool feature. But going back to just doing those polyrhythm stuff, we have more control in the piano roll. So I'm going to right click here. Let's also first create a new pattern. And now we're going to do polyrhythms, right? So I'll call this polyrhythms. Cool, polyrhythms. Now it's completely blank. We have a new pattern. I'll set this to channel 5 on the mixer. So this is a weird thing in FL Studio. I'll activate all the tracks. There's a mixer, obviously. But by default, things don't go to the mixer. So if I just play the song. Right now it is, because the default template had those 4 sounds going to the mixer. But as you add elements into your channel rack, you have to manually assign them to the mixer. So that's kind of a weird thing, but it's just about getting used to that. And which also means there's a lot of flexibility. You can decide how you want to route it to the mixer. But for now, let's leave that. Let's just go into the piano roll. I'm right-clicking that 808 sound. I'm going to choose piano roll. And now we're looking at the piano roll in FL Studio. This should be familiar. Any DAW, would have a similar thing. Except you're not really seeing, since it's FPC, the drum machine, it's not really showing us notes. It's just showing us the actual sounds, the names of the sounds. And that's very helpful. So let's go ahead and just pencil in a pattern. So I'm in the pencil mode here. Of course, you can record and stuff, but I'll just pencil in something. And make sure we're playing back the pattern. Let's hear this with the metronome, maybe. Okay, a little bit of syncopation there. Put a snare as well. We have a classic 808 snare sound. I can adjust the velocity by holding down Option and just scrolling on the actual note itself. Very convenient with the scroll wheel. Okay, this is cool. Now let's look at polyrhythmic stuff. Polyrhythms, right? We've done polymeters, so now we're talking about polyrhythms. So polyrhythms is multiple rhythms happening at the same time instead of multiple meters. It's still the same meter, but different rhythms. Now, what I mean by different rhythm, probably the most obvious and the simplest one is a triplet, right? So right now everything is in halves, right? We have this bar, 1 bar pattern. We divide into half, we can get a half note value, right? So that's about half note approximately, if I can get it right there. And half of that would be quarter note, half of that would be eighth note, half of that would be a 16th. Keep dividing by 2, you get subdivision. So that's all, equal subdivisions of our bar. But what if we, instead of dividing by 2, divide by 3? We can change the grid here. There's a 1/3 beat option, and I can turn on the snap to grid feature. So now the background, sorry, I turned it off. It was on. Not very clear there. Now it's off and now it's on. So now if you look, it's a bit hard to see, but if you look at the background, this first beat has 3 subdivisions. Second beat has 3, so on and so forth. Previously it was quarter, it was 4. Yeah. So we had 4 16ths per beat. By default, every DAW will have that, but also every DAW will have a triplet option. So now I can just add some kind of a triplet thing. Let's say hi-hats. So just add, I'll do the paint thingy. Just paint. And since the grid is on, it just, paints based on the grid. Right, that's a very common thing. Open hi-hat may not be the best option. Let's switch down to a close hi-hat, which is down here. Right, that's simple, right? Triplets, we've all done that before. So I have a triplet hi-hat thing, but everything else was based off of, to make it very obvious, let's go back to the quarter beat thing, and let's do, I don't know, like a conga. Yeah, let's do this in 4. So just to hear how they both interact. I'll do every other maybe. Right, conga is dividing the beat by 2, but the close hats is in 3. So that is called a polyrhythm. Now we can take it a step further. Instead of 3, we can have divisions of 5. Odd divisions are more interesting. 6 is basically double time of 3, so that's already there. And we have 6 in FL Studio. We have 6 as well. 1/6 a beat. But 1/5 would be interesting, 1/7 would be interesting, 1/9 would be interesting. So let's see how we could do all those weird ones. So for that, we'll have to do a bit of a manual setup. So I'll leave the conga just for reference. So let's do 5 first. And this is very similar in other DAWs. You may have seen other people on YouTube demonstrate this. So not on FL Studio. I haven't seen, at least me personally, haven't seen anyone demonstrate this in FL Studio. So I've added 5 hits here. clearly it's not 5 within that first beat. I want to basically squish those 5 notes. They need to be equally spaced within that first beat. Now you might think that, oh, what if you just select everything and try to squish it, right? So I'll hold down Option, so it'll not snap. But when you try to squish it, and just like in every DAW, Logic and Ableton Live, it'll just make the note lengths smaller. It won't squish time, right? So that's not going to help. Let me undo that. But you notice when I selected all these notes, there's this funny looking thing here, like a stretch marker. So with this, I can literally do what I want, right? So I can just stretch this. So I want these 5 to be, and it's stretching everything equally. So it's going to be perfectly same length. It does not snap, unfortunately. And if I can turn on snap, it'll snap at the wrong place. I want the tail end to snap to this next downbeat here. So I'm just going to zoom in. And there's this one weird thing I'm going to show you in FL Studio by default. I think under general settings. Is it general settings? File? Project. Yeah, the time base, the parts per quarter is set to 96 by default. I'm just going to switch to 960, so we have a lot more detail when we zoom in. All right, I don't know why 996 was, oops, I'm zooming too much. There we go. So that looks okay. It looks like it's ending perfectly at the beginning of that second beat. So now I have 5 hi-hat, equally divided hi-hat hits within that first beat. I just need to fill this up, so I'll just repeat it. Command B is the shortcut for FL Studio. Let's hear this now. Let me mute I'll keep that, just mute the congas. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's slow it down. It's like too fast. I can't even say it. Let's do 100 something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 1, 3 waltz, but now we're, I don't know what you would call this, like a quintuplet, because there's 5 hits per beat. Now, since I have the mute tool, I can mute some of these notes in between to make this a bit more interesting. Kind of mute like every other and skip a few. Because when it's continuous like this, kind of gets a bit repetitive and kind of annoying. And that's cool, right? So it has like an interesting bounce to it. So and I like doing this on hi-hats, because hi-hats really define the feel of whatever pattern you're playing. Because your kick and snare usually are like kind of, you know, fillers, usually on the downbeat, or once in a while on like a upbeat, like a syncopated beat. But the hi-hats usually more consistent, and they really define what the rhythm is going to sound like. So there we have it, like a quintuplet. So let's do more. I'll delete this. Let's try some other ones. Delete that. Let's do 7. Right. So I'm going to use the pencil tool here again. So now here's an annoying thing, and also in many DAWs, the note length will always be whatever you last selected. Now I want to go back to the normal grid. I want this note to be a regular 16th note. So I'm going to try and extend it, but it doesn't snap. It's doing this weird thing. One very nice feature in FL Studio is I can hold down the right side shift button on my keyboard, and I can click and drag, and it basically gives me the access to the what do they call this? Like slice tool? What is it called? Yeah, slice tool. So I've now sliced that note. I wish Ableton Live had this feature, slicing notes. Ableton Live 11 also does not have it. Very sad. But yeah, now I've sliced that note, and now I can just pencil in that length. You click on it once, so the new note I create will be of that same length. So I need how many? 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I just have to select these notes, squish them in, and then kind of choose what notes I want, and I have this cool 7 septuplet kind of feel. So select all by command clicking here. You see that little stretchy thingy. Stretch it in. It doesn't snap, so you kind of zoom in. You can see it slightly. I don't know how well it's going through on the live stream there, but I'm going to move it a bit to the right. Now it looks like it's perfectly there. Actually, even if it's not perfectly aligned, now you're getting like a thing that is in some kind of a tuplet, but it's not exactly on a tuplet. So it's even more interesting. So it's nice that it does not snap to the grid. All right, I'm going to repeat this. Actually, before I repeat it, let me delete a few. So I'll delete that one, delete all these 3. So I just have 2, let's say. So now what I'll do is I'll select this entire chunk here and just select these notes and repeat that segment. Oh, and yeah, not loop that part. Let's make the hi-hat louder so you can really feel that rhythm there. It almost sounds like the drummer is rushing, but it's not. It's perfectly on the grid because the kick, snare, everything else is perfectly aligned to the downbeat. Let's hear this with the straight conga. I need to use the mute tool. This I don't think FL Studio has. Like in Ableton Live, you can select all notes and hit one button, hit the 0 button to mute or unmute all notes together. Here I have to do it kind of manually by dragging like that. All right, yeah, so there you go. So that's a nice little rhythm there. Let's do, since we can, let's do 9. I'm going to delete this one. Or let's put it away. I'll just move it. Oops, not all of them, but just the hi-hat. Let's move it somewhere here. I like that the name of the sound is written directly on the note. I don't think other DAWs specifically do this. So you always have to like look back, go to the left and say, oh, that's the tom again, right? So it's nice that the name is directly on the note. Very helpful. All right, so we're going to do 9. So I'll go back to that pencil tool here. Close hat, just draw. Okay, it's not going to do it. The length is incorrect, so I'll just make it longer. Use that very helpful slice tool to cut out the note perfectly on the grid. Delete that, select it, and just paint in 9. So we have 4, 8, and 9. Cool. Select all of them. We see that stretchy thingy, right? The stretch. I don't know. There's no name for it. Usually in FL Studio, just like in Ableton Live, when you hover your cursor on something, over here it kind of tells you. It's called the hint panel, just like the info view in Ableton Live, and even in Logic Pro, in the top left corner, there's a little help view. So it kind of tells you what these different features are. But apparently this doesn't have a name yet. It's just showing us the time there. All right, so let's squish this in. So I want all those 9 notes to fill in there, and I'll zoom in to make sure it's perfectly, all right, slightly in front. Let's pull it back a bit. There you go. So I guess this answers the whole micro editing thing. So you can kind of zoom in and really finesse your edits in FL Studio. And now I'll duplicate, Command B, fill up the rhythm here. Now, the more subdivisions you have, the faster it's going to sound, or the subdivisions, there are more notes. So better to be in a slower tempo. Let's go down to, let's say, 85. We have too many things happening. So we have the 9 division. We have the, I think this was the 7, and we have the straight 4. Right? And we have syncopated kick and snare. Right, so that's a bit too much. So I guess we could mix and match. You can have like one beat that does a 9 subdivision, another one that does a 7, another one does a 5, 11. You can kind of, plan that out accordingly. But I'm just gonna, let's mute it this time. I'll just use the mute tool. Just mute some of these. I'm just randomly muting things. You can kind of come back to it and choose which ones you want to keep. I think the toms, yeah, too many polyrhythms in one rhythm gets a bit excessive. So I'm going to mute this one here. Oh wait, it was muted, wasn't it? I guess the conga. Let's mute the conga as well. Oh, that's cool, right? It's almost like a drunk pattern. Like the hi-hat is like not quite on time, but it is. It's just like a very unique subdivision. All right, so that's pretty much it from me. But I address some questions here. What is the kick pattern called? Yeah, so the kick, it's not really a name for it. I am using syncopation. Syncopation just means that you're not falling on the downbeat, right? So you can see here, this is not on the downbeat. This one is. This one is not on the downbeat. This one is, and this one is. So. And what is the downbeat? That can also vary. So for example, I can say downbeat is just the very first quarter note, the second quarter note, third quarter note, fourth quarter note. In that sense, the kick, there's only one downbeat here. And that's it. There's only one downbeat on the kick because it's only happening here. But you can further subdivide saying that, okay, all the halves are also considered downbeats. So basically eighth notes. So that falls on a downbeat, that falls on a downbeat, and that falls on a downbeat. So really depends on how you want to define what the downbeat is. And also in context of the rest of the pattern. Yeah, lots of fun. All right, let me know if there are any more questions. But this is pretty much it. So we have polyrhythms. Just for fun, it might sound horrendous, but just for fun, let's see if we can align up this 808 polyrhythm pattern with our polymetric pattern and just make this huge chaotic mess. Or yeah, I don't know, it might sound interesting. Let's have a listen. So we have that poly something thing already right now. So if I play the song, we have the poly something thing, which I use the Euclidean sequencer to create, and then the rest of it was just based on FL Studio's adjusting the length of each pattern. Okay, that sounds horrible now. Okay, let's not have these ones. Okay, that's cool. This is actually very nice, right? So that's sounding cool. Let's see if our polyrhythm is going to work with this. Yeah, it might be a bit too much. Right? So you have to be, once you discover these features, concepts, it's really up to you how to use it in a musical sense, right? So I'm just showing you these features. Application is what really takes some skill. So yeah, learning a feature is like fairly simple. I don't know what that is. So apparently that's something called fugue machine. I don't know why I was calling fudge machine. Fugue machine on iOS for melody line. You have something. Yeah. So try this out in your productions with your rhythms. And these rhythmic ideas don't just apply to rhythms, right? So not just to drums. It can apply to your chord progression. Your chord progression can have like a syncopation. Your melodic line can have a syncopation, or could be in that quintuplet pattern. So it's not just for drums exclusively. All right. Any more questions? Let me see here. Earlier questions from before. Seamless did show. Oh, so there's a guy named Seamless. He does a lot of FL Studio tutorials. If you want to learn more about FL Studio, you can check him out, his YouTube channel. Somebody built a thing in Max for Live for it. Yeah, if there's something missing in Live, there's always a Max for Live version of it. So Euclidean sequencers definitely should exist in the Max for Live domain. I'm not sure about Logic though. Yeah, Logic, I'm not sure if it has anything like that. You can create your own MIDI effects in Logic. So maybe someone made a Euclidean sequencer in the MIDI effect. But yeah, I'm not too sure about that. Can you suggest a solid one reading material to learn drum beats? There's actually, I remember when I was in college, there was a book on let me look it up. There was a really good book on polyrhythms. I found it in my school library. Let me just Google it right now. It was great because it was less reading and it was just patterns. It would show you patterns and you just say, okay, try playing this, and now try playing this, and now try playing this. So that was kind of cool. So let me see if I can find it. So polyrhythms for dummies or something. Probably not, but something on those lines. RHYTHMS book. But Google is your friend, so I'm sure you can find tons and tons of resources. Oh, there you go. That's the very first in my search. I found the very first result. Yeah, it's called The Musician's Guide to Polyrhythms, written by Peter Magadini. Yeah, this is a real throwback. I read this book ages ago, but it was really helpful. And it gets fairly complex beyond just polyrhythms. They first start off with simple patterns, and you can use those for just creating simple patterns. And then when you want to dive deeper, you can check out the more complex ones. So polyrhythms for musicians. It does use notation, so you kind of need to know a little bit about notation. But drum notation is fairly simple to understand. So yeah, check out. It's on Amazon. I'm seeing right now there's a preview. You can kind of look at some of the pages. And it shows you the notations of all the different patterns, exercises, and they kind of just give you a whole bunch of patterns to play with. So definitely worth checking out that one. All right. Any other questions here? Polygamy. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. So that maybe the next live stream. But yeah, so that is it from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this. So I'm Rishabh Rajan. You can check out, I also have a small YouTube channel. I post random videos there worth checking out. I do have a tutorial on polyrhythms and polymetric stuff, or this whole concept using Logic. So any Logic users here, you can check that out on my YouTube channel. But for Ableton Live, there's so many videos. I'm sure, let me think. There was an Ableton-Certified trainer, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he did one long time ago. I'm sure it's still available. Andrew Huang recently did this whole concept on explaining polyrhythms and polymeters. So if you really want to understand it, this really fancy way with really cool visuals, just check out that video. He explains it really, really well. And Adam Neely, I'm sure he's definitely covered polyrhythms and tuplets in some of his video essays. So if you just want to understand theoretical concepts like this, check out those videos. But yeah, so that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this, you guys. It's really great to be here with 343 Labs, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'm going to end the stream now.